Okay, guys, so we're going to take a look today at dividing fractions. Now, I know that this is something you guys did last year, so it's going to be kind of a crash course. We're just going to go pretty quickly. I'm going to assume that you have a pretty good idea of what we're doing, and this is just kind of a review. Now, one thing that you probably didn't work with too much last year was positives and negatives when you're dividing fractions. So we're going to take a quick look at that, and we're going to include that in here. Now, I've got good news for you. The rules for positives and negatives with division are the exact same rules for positives and negatives with multiplication. So what did we say yesterday were the rules, the guidelines for multiplying with negatives? Jake? Perfect. If the signs are the same, that means that our product, well today, our quotient, is going to be positive, greater than 0, positive. And if we have different signs, that means that our quotient is going to be negative. Okay, if the signs are the same, our quotient's positive, but if the signs are different, that means our quotient's going to be negative, just like yesterday. Exact same deal as yesterday. Okay? So that's the first thing we look at. When we're going to divide, the first thing that we look at is the sign. Consider the sign of the quotient. Now, last year, I know Ms. Lowshelter gave you guys a trick. What to remember? 3 little words. What to remember about dividing fractions. Remember what those were? Copy, change, flip. Exactly right. Okay, now we're going to add a little bit more of a little higher level thought to it. So instead of those words, instead of copy, change, flip. Now really, guys, that's what we're going to do, but we're going to give it a little bit higher level words. Okay, so that when we get into Algebra 1 next year and your teacher starts using these words, you know what they're talking about. Okay, so first off, this flip part. Okay, there's a fancy math word for that, the reciprocal. We're going to take the reciprocal of the second number, or the second fraction. Okay, that's the flip part. Okay, we flip the second fraction. Okay, except we're going to say, take the reciprocal. Then, instead of dividing, we're going to multiply. And we're going to multiply normally. How did we say yesterday we multiply? Straight across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. Now there's one more thing that we absolutely have to do at the end. With every single fraction, at the end of the problem, go ahead. We need to simplify. We absolutely, positively, 100% must simplify. Okay, now guys, the reason that we're doing it this way, okay, there's a lot of different ways that you can divide fractions. This is probably the most straightforward way. This is probably the way that your teachers have always taught you. Okay, and the reason is this. Multiplication and division are essentially the same operation. They're what are called inverses. They're opposites. They do the exact opposite thing. Now, because they do the exact opposite thing, that means that we can always take a division and rewrite it using multiplication. And that's exactly what this all is. We're rewriting with or as multiplication. We're rewriting as multiplication. Now, I can't just change division to multiplication. Okay, we know that that doesn't work. They're different operations. They don't mean the exact same thing. So if I change this to multiplication, the other thing that I have to do is take the inverse or the reciprocal of the second fraction. That allows me to rewrite it as multiplication. Now, the whole reason that we rewrite it as multiplication is multiplication with fractions is pretty easy. We just go straight across and simplify. Okay, we looked at that yesterday. So, we're going to copy, change, flip. We're going to take the reciprocal of the second number. We're going to multiply normally. Okay, and then we're going to simplify. All right, so we're going to jump around a bit, but let's start at the first one, and we'll go from there. So I have negative 3/2 divided by 9/4. Before I think about the numbers, we want to think about the sign. Do they have the same sign or different signs? They have different signs. And like we said, if they have different signs, that means that our quotient is going to be negative, less than 0. Okay, so I know no matter what happens, my final answer here has to be negative. So I've got negative 3/2. I want to take the reciprocal of the second fraction. So instead of 9/4, I'll have 4/9. And then instead of dividing, we'll multiply. Now, like we said yesterday, we want to multiply straight across. So 3 times 4 gives us 12. 2 times 9 gives us 18. And we said our quotient is going to be negative, so we've got negative 12 over 18. But we always, always, always want to simplify. So is there anything that can divide both 12 and 18? I can use 3. What else can I use? I can use 6. What else can I use? 2. Okay? And that's it. Those are my 3 choices. I'm going to pick the biggest one because it's going to make the least amount of work, the least amount of steps. You can use 2 and 3, okay? But if we use 6, it does the whole thing all at once. Okay, so divide by 6, and I get 2/3. But don't forget, it's negative 2/3. Our quotient's negative. We can't just lose that sign. Okay? Hold on to your question. I promise I'll get to it, okay? All right. Let's jump ahead and look at number 5. And number 5 is going to get a little crazy. First off, before anything else, before I look at the numbers, I need to see the signs. I need to think positives, negatives. Do they have the same sign or do they have different signs? Same sign. What does that mean about their product? Or excuse me, their quotient? Is it going to be positive or negative? Take a look at what we wrote way up top. Good. It's going to be positive. Okay, remember that greater than 0 means positive. So I know no matter what happens here, I'm going to have a positive quotient. Now, I have a fraction divided by an integer. What do we have to do when that happens? Whether it's add, subtract, multiply, or divide. What are we always going to have to do? Put that 2 over 1. Okay, remember, over 1 means divided by 1, which won't change what that negative 2 is equal to, but it'll change what it looks like. So now I've got fractions, okay, and I want to divide. Well, I need to take the reciprocal of the second one. So instead of negative 2, I'll have negative 1/2. Bless you. And I want to multiply by negative 8/9. So I take the reciprocal of the second one, and now I can multiply normally. Okay, so let's multiply straight across. 8 times 1, and 9 times 2, 18. Now we said they have the same sign, both negative, so that means that our quotient is going to be positive. Now we always want to simplify. Is there anything that can divide both 18 and 8? 2. Can divide them both by 2. So let's divide them both by 2. Okay, and what do we get? 4/9. And it's still a positive 4/9. Okay, let's take a pause for questions. Okay, let's get back to it. Let's look at number 2. Okay, number 2. Do they have the same signs or do they have different signs? Same signs. So what does that mean about the product? Or excuse me, the quotient. The quotient. What does that mean about the quotient? It's going to be greater than 0. It's going to be positive. Okay? So now let's rewrite this using addition. Okay, what would this quotient look like rewritten with addition? Did I say with addition? I sure did. With multiplication. Let's get that straight. Multiply by 7/3. Okay? You're really, really close to rewriting this with multiplication, but there's something that you're missing that's really, really important. Okay, -2/7 and -7/3. Okay? All right, now I have it rewritten with multiplication. Go ahead. Okay, we can multiply straight across. We said our product or quotient is going to be positive. 2 times 7 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. 21. All right, so we've got 14 over 21. I need to reduce 2/3. I can divide numerator and denominator by 7. Okay, and that will give me 2/3. Hey, same thing I had on number 1, right? No. Number 1 is -2/3. Number 2 is +2/3. You've got to keep an eye on those signs. Okay? So, to divide fractions, first, we need to look at positive versus negative. Then, we need to look at rewriting using multiplication, which means not only do we change that division sign to a multiplication sign, but we also are going to take the reciprocal of that second fraction. Then we can multiply straight across, then we can reduce.